Welcome everyone to our weekly Facebook Live. I hope everybody is doing well. Go ahead and throw a comment in the comment bar if you are joining me. I keep trying to see how I can see these live comments in real time, and it is fascinating to me that this remains an obstacle. So let's see if we can get this figured out. So I'm just gonna write a note in here and see if this starts us. And today we are going to be talking about something that for me is actually an issue right now, which is, sometimes I'm chatting about things that I've kind of figured out, and sometimes it's things that have happened but are coming back into play. And some things are just like that. Some things are, we figure things out or we think we've got it nailed down, and then it rears its head again. And so that's what I wanted us to really chat about today, is that feeling that we're not where we should be. So first and foremost is the very fact of the languaging of should, which is always interesting. I try my very hardest not to should on myself or should on anybody else, because it's the fastest way to creating, suffering. Because if you think about it, there's this old saying, pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. And I just heard it again in a book, and I thought about it and how much of our suffering really is created by our thoughts. And that's what the original saying is talking about, that pain is inevitable. We're created for pain. If you even think about like pain receptors and everything else, we're actually created to experience physical pain. That's not an anomaly. So pain in itself is really just pain. It's just that we add more to it. We add a story to it or our thoughts to it, why it shouldn't be like this. Life should be easier. All these things that, the four questions come through, and it's like, is that true? Is that really true? Can you absolutely be sure that that's true? And how does this make you feel, or who are you when you have this thought? How would you feel, or who would you be without the thought? And so that kind of is Byron Katie's work of ending the suffering that we experience, is asking these four questions. And when we should on ourselves, we are in this really interesting place of comparison, and it's also a place where we are judging ourselves. And so much of our suffering comes from judgment, not just the judgment from somebody else, but the judgment that we have on ourselves and the judgment that we have on other people. Even that creates within our suffering, because when we're judging people or having expectations on people, then we're creating a separation, a split between us. And so today I really want to talk on this whole piece of, what is it, when we're struggling and we feel like I should be further along, what is really coming up for all of us, or at least for myself when I'm experiencing this. I can always only really talk from my own experience, and what I witness with my clients, with my team, with the world around me, friends, family, that sort of thing. And so there's this piece about trusting the process that can be really difficult. And it comes from understanding that we are in a constant state of co-creation with the universe. So it can sometimes feel like we're completely alone. I feel this way quite often, where I'm struggling because I think, am I off my course? Is there nobody out there with me? More than once I've talked about it many times in my story about feeling like if there was a God, then at points he thought either he'd forgotten about me or he didn't care. And this understanding that my prayers were being answered, just not in a way that I thought it was supposed to look. Why is that freezing? Oh, hopefully that doesn't keep happening. So, that was supposed to look a different way. I had an expectation. And when that expectation wasn't being met, then it was creating my suffering. And so there is the thought piece that comes with it. Once I stepped back, and unfortunately it usually happens after I'm through a situation. Oh, let's just see what's happening there. Let's give a second here and see if there's some pieces. See if that helps. All right. The joys of technology. Hopefully that will give us the support that it needs from us. There we go. So it's not easy to always feel like we're not where we should be. And so, one thing that comes up is we question our timing. So, am I doing this at the right time? Should I have more knowledge, more information? Should I be in a different place? Am I pushing things too soon? And this might be for goals that we want to achieve in business. It could be for relationships even. It could be for health things. It comes up, there's a lot of places where we struggle to trust a process of where things are coming. And one of the big places that shows up, I know for myself, is the comparing our process to somebody else's. And so, there's always seems to be ebbs and flows. And it can seem like some people have, the golden goose, or they have a horseshoe, and it just seems like everything's a win for them. We don't always see what's behind the screens, but even sometimes when we do, it seems like for some people it's a lot easier. And we compare ourselves in that process. Why is it a struggle for me? Where am I not good enough? Where do I need to be better? And so we compare ourselves to other people, and within the comparison is a point of suffering, because we're always in a state of interconnectedness. So within unity consciousness, within a loving universe, within the understanding that there is only one, really life force. There's one, it's beyond just the word of God. Like sometimes when we think of God, we think of this like singular being, as opposed to this concept of all or oneness, where it's like universal, or the ocean and the drops of the ocean that make up the ocean. And so when we feel like we're separate and we're competing against each other, comparing ourselves to other people, then we're creating greater separation. The thing is fear is created by the illusion of separation, that we could ever be separate from one another. What I think, what I feel, what I do affects everyone around me. It affects everyone around me not only in a gross, large physical experience, but it also affects everyone around me, even from the vibrational frequency. How I'm vibrating, how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking is going to impact the vibrational frequency of my home, of my work, of the people that I'm around. So even if I'm not acting out in this moment on those feelings, on those thoughts, it's still being picked up. It's still affecting other people. And if we're not sure about this, keep in mind our feelings about things like 5G. If we believe that the boxes on our homes that are put there by hydro or by, any sort of telephone lines, power lines, that sort of thing, if those things can affect us, they're affecting us through energy, through vibrational frequency. And we each have our own bioelectromagnetic field. So we have our own field of energy that expands. So even just our heart has been measured to expand and open over 15 feet in diameter when we're happy or in love. Our whole bioelectromagnetic field of a person has been measured, scientifically measured, at over a mile in diameter. That means how I'm vibrating is affecting the people in my home, on other floors and other rooms. If we're in a building, it's affecting people in the next room over or in the whole building. And so we're having an effect, we're having an effect on all these people around us, even in the house next door. And so it's something to consider, because sometimes when we're off, it's like, what is off? The energy feels off. It might not even be somebody that's in your room or in your office. It might be somebody that is in the next room over, the next office over, the next home over. So there's a lot more going on in the world around us than we realize. And so when we're comparing ourselves, the thing is we drop our energy and we lower our vibrational frequency. And so if you consider that, then it's like, oh, I need to be careful about if I'm lowering my vibrational frequency, it's my responsibility to stop comparison as soon as I become aware of it, so that I can up my frequency once again. And so when we're in this state of comparison, of shooting ourselves, we're lowering our energy field. And within that lowering of energy field, we start attracting, because we're magnetic. So bioelectromagnetic field. So within the magnetic field, so the electrical field is transmitting information out like a radio tower. And the magnetic component is attracting experiences back. And so I'm going to be picking up on frequencies that are similar to mine. So if I'm vibrating here, I can only pick up other channels of thoughts, of emotions, of feelings, of experiences that are vibrating within my field. Which is why when we're feeling really bummed out, we will start to crave denser food. When you're sad, you're not like, oh, I want like some fresh organic fruit. You're thinking, I want ice cream, pizza, comfort foods, even the language that we use, and think about the density, the energy of comfort food. And so and the same goes for our thoughts. So if I'm thinking lower quality thoughts, then I'm going to pick up more of like attracts like. So even in the non-physical realm, we see this. And so when we're comparing and we're lowering our energy field, or when we're doubting, when we're feeling alone, when we kind of get into those cycles of thoughts and beliefs, we're creating our suffering, which creates more density in us. And then we're attracting more of it, and we're compounding what we're already experiencing. The other thing that can come when we're thinking about these things is wondering if we're even on the right path. So am I even doing the right thing? Should I change jobs? Should I change vocations? Am I, especially if we've made the big change. So in the past, we've been listening to society. We've had the corporate jobs. We've had all the things that we were told we were supposed to want to achieve. And then we start to shift because we can feel that we're out of alignment with ourselves. And in that experience of being out of alignment, we start going, well, maybe I need to do something else, whether that is within work or whether that's within our hobbies or our relationships, and we start shifting. And at first it might feel like it's not easy. So we think like, oh, am I even on the right path? And so we need to understand that the journey itself isn't linear. And so first we've got this issue where we're shitting on ourselves, or or we can't trust it. It feels off. It feels hard. And we have to understand that the journey itself isn't linear. And it's not even just cyclical. So everything in life is cyclical. But it's not cyclical on a flat plane of existence. It's cyclical in what we call spiralization. So, if you spiral an apple or a carrot or some piece of vegetable or fruit these days, and you spiralize it, and it kind of makes a coil, but you kind of lift it, and you kind of get like the curl of a hair. And so we start going spiralization. So in the journey of whatever we're doing, we're going up the mountain. And as we head up the mountain, the thing is at the bottom, it can feel like it's a long trudge. And so especially in the beginning when we switched our journey and we've got this path moving. And so we're traveling around the mountain. And we begin at the base, it's a larger round. And this is why sometimes it feels like we're going backwards, is because as we go around the mountain, it all of a sudden is like, oh, I've been here before, but we're at a slightly different elevation. We have a different perception of the experiences that we're going through. Does that make sense? And so as we're coming around this mountain, it sometimes feels like we keep slipping back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And what's really happening is we're switching the perception as we go around the mountain. And so growth doesn't always look like what our expectation is that it's kind of linear. And it maybe is even linear this way, and we go, okay, well, it kind of goes down a bit, and then we go up, and then we go down. But it's not, because it's very cyclical. And so even in a linear that's up and down, we would still expect to be moving in one direction. And so it helps when we remember that it's really more of a spiral that we're moving within, because when the view of it keeps changing, or the perception keeps changing, or you think, I already did this, why am I going through it again? Or it feels like we're slipping backwards. This is why, is because it's not a linear production. It's really a spiraled production. And that's how I think of our lives, as a production. And so we're in this giant play that we are acting out certain roles, and we change those roles, those costumes, depending on what act we're in, who's around us, what scene we're in. And so as we're moving through the production of life, it's not this one linear plane. It's actually more of a spiral that we're moving into. And it's important that as we're going through this, that we're not comparing. So we go back into that piece of the process and comparing ourselves to somebody else's process. And so each of us has our own journey on the mountain, our own path. And it's not that the mountains per se are any different. It's that they're they're not different as in like height or difficulties. It's not like some of us get like a little mound. We all have the arc of our life that we're moving through. It's just that some people move through theirs different. They have different obstacles that they'll need to go. And we don't always see what somebody else's obstacles are. And often we see people after they're already through the majority of our obstacles. So you take somebody like Mel Robbins, say, and she just did that book, Let Them. And for a lot of people, if you're looking at her process only now, but you don't look or hear her story about going through the mass amounts of debt, or going through, alcohol and having to come through on the other side and go, am I going to drink? Or, there's a lot of struggles there that maybe we don't see when we're comparing ourselves to somebody else's process, because we don't know what's happening behind closed doors, whether or not they're sharing it with us. And often people don't share their struggles until they're already through. So we don't often know what somebody's going through until long later. So comparing ourselves is rather fruitless, because all that does is, again, it slows their journey down. So if you think about when you're denser, we're carrying the baggage of those thoughts, of those judgments, of those expectations. You can imagine that each of them is an item in a backpack. And as you're going up that mountain, you're now having to go up that mountain with a backpack full of these judgments and doubts and frustrations and resentments. And so the heavier the backpack is, the slower you're going to be able to travel up the mountain. And so the importance of us putting some of these pieces down is that it changes the speed in which we can move through our process. So it's our own emotions and thoughts and beliefs that slow the process down. And somebody else may have already put those pieces down. They may be already worked through them. They already took their rest stop and went, you know what? I don't need this excess whatever. And we just drop that stuff so that we can move up the mountain at a different rate of speed. And then the other piece is understand. So there's where the timing comes in. So the timing is absolutely yours. And it's going to be unique to you because you have your own specific set of it's like experiences, like lessons, but you're the one that set them. I think that's the hardest thing is we often think like, oh, I'm going through all of these lessons, but who picked them for me? And we often think that we're being punished. And we're not. It's that we've picked the lessons that we've got to still go through. And until we're ready to put down the baggage, then we're going to keep having to deal with carrying them up the mountain. And what's fascinating, when we take a look right now, I've restarted picking up the Bhagavad Gita. And so I spent a couple of years back studying the Bhagavad Gita, which is a book in Hinduism, and it is the base of karma yoga, or the yoga of love. And it is the book that Mahatma Gandhi said it was the only book that you needed to live a great life. And so through my yoga teacher training, it had come up in one of my studies, and I started studying it. I like to study different theologies to understand things. And I've picked it back up, and I've made it my morning reading again. Every day I read, it might be just a verse or a paragraph or a page from one of the transcribings of it by Eknathaswaran. And so in there, it talks about karma. And so understanding that when everybody thinks of karma as like you get what you deserve. And then, it's a fairly Western aggressive way of talking about it, but karma is more about the law of cause and effect. And the law of cause and effect has a lot more at play. It's not like what you do right now and then what happens in the future. It's been playing back not only throughout this lifetime, but through multiple lifetimes. And so the more willing that we are to learn our lessons and put the baggage down, and maybe the lesson that you needed to learn in this lifetime is forgiveness. And it's not just forgiveness for other people, but forgiveness of yourself. And so the more that you hold on to your judgments and expectations, the longer it's going to take you to travel up that mountain or move through your process than it would if you started to heal those wounds and release the beliefs that they were helping you. So usually when we're holding on to a belief, it's because we believe that in some way this belief is protecting me. It's safe to stay where I am, and by holding on to these beliefs, it's keeping me where I know, and it's the devil I do know over the devil I don't. Or it could be protecting you because maybe we believe that where we're moving into, the goals that we have, the dreams that we have, would be unsafe. So if we're like, oh, I would really love to accomplish this in my lifetime, but we feel like, oh, but if I did that, then what would be expected of me? Or what would people do? What would people say? When we're watching people be trolled constantly on social media, social media is kind of our biggest platform these days, then it can be scary, the idea of being out there and being visible, being seen, because nobody wants to be trolled. And that maybe feels like it's unsafe. So even though you'd like to help people and write books or speak or coach or teach or do whatever it is that lights you up, maybe you really would like to do that, but subconsciously it feels like that would be a dangerous place to put yourself in. And so that would mean that if that is your purpose, or that's part of what you're trying to get to at the pinnacle of the mountain, then with that belief, you're slowing the process down to get there. And so the faster that we can release that, the better the timing is for us to move up that mountain. The key here is understanding that we are the ones that are in control. And we're always being met where we're at. And we want to be able, and then the third part of this is we want to be able to look for evidence that we're moving forward. So sometimes it can be that we're moving forward, but it feels like we're standing still, or it feels like we're not on that right path. And so we want to look for evidence of the fact that we're already on the right path. So what does that mean? So it could be asking the question of going backward. So when I was in Chicago with one of my coaches in October, on our last day, we did this process where she was like, okay, where do you want to be in 5 years from now? And we all had 4 sticky notes. And so we put a sticky note down on the floor for 5 years in the future. And then we put a sticky note down for, say, like halfway there, like 2.5 years in the future. We put a sticky note down for where we are right now. And then we actually put a sticky note down behind us for 1 year in the past. And so that was really interesting. So I was expected the forward motion. I didn't expect backward. So we started our forward motion, and where do we want to be in 5 years from now? And so we put that down, and then I was like, okay, well, what steps would you have had to have taken? So when you looked back, you've got everything that you always dreamed of, and you look back, what did you have to do to get there? And so as we stepped backward onto there to see where we would need to be, it kind of gave us the steps that we needed to create over this next couple of years. And then she's like, okay, I want you to look back at where you are today. And so we kind of like, okay, that's where I am today. And you kind of step back to where you are today. And then we go back to 5 years forward and back to today and back and forth, back and forth. And then she said, I want you to go back to where you were 1 year from now. And all of us were stunned at how far we had come, even though when we started the process, it didn't feel like we'd come very far. And so asking the question, where were you 1 year ago, helps us start to see, if we're being really honest and not judgmental with ourselves, how far we've actually come. You've had 365 days of your journey. And so there has been momentum and movement. Maybe it's not as much as you would have wanted, but where have you come from? So we're looking for the evidence to help us gain momentum again in moving forward. And then what have you learned? What have you learned on this last little while? Maybe it's that you've started reading other books. Like, what books have you read? Podcasts have you listened to? Who are you spending time with? What have you learned over this last year that has helped support you in the momentum of who do you want to be? So I always think, like, it's not always about having goals of, achievements, that sort of thing. But the question is, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be in 5 years? And maybe that is a parent, or maybe that's a grandmother, or maybe that is traveling. It can be also, there's nothing that is comparable to somebody else. We all have our own dreams. And so what have you learned in this last year that is helping you, that helped you get from where you were a year ago to get to where you are now? And how can it support you getting you from where you are now into the next year coming forward? And then the other question is how have you expanded? And we often think of ourselves as still being this small person, that we're still the same person we were a year ago, which is impossible. It's absolutely impossible because you've had 365 days worth of breaths. You're not even on a cellular level the same person at all. So who are you now is a completely different person than who you were a year ago. You've had 365 days worth of interactions. So even on a mental and emotional level, you're a different person. And so understanding that and recognizing it and looking at it from that point of view, it helps us start to understand that we've been making momentum all along. And we're not actually in the same place that we have been, that there has been change for us. And a lot of this helps us really get that we're not actually stuck. It might feel like it because we're not moving as fast as we want or we hoped or we dreamed of. But the important thing is understanding that we are moving forward. We are actually making change and progression in our life. Maybe if it's just simply learning how to have better boundaries. For a lot of us, that's been a big piece is, where's my boundaries at? It feels like I'm stuck in the same behavioral traits that I've had of people pleasing or not having boundaries. But then you look back and you're like, oh, wait a minute. My relationships have changed. And so a lot of it comes back to just trusting the process. We're in a constant state of co-creation. What always makes me shocked is that where I am today, I could never have dreamed of being 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I couldn't have even imagined it. And not just about like the physical achievements, but actually more about my mental and emotional achievements, my healing journey, my spiritual growth journey. So when we take a look at ourselves, if we look at ourselves from all these different avenues, from all these different perceptions, have you actually been moving as slow as you thought you were in the beginning? Or have you actually moved and grown more than you even realized? Because most of the time, I found that for myself at least, and for a lot of people that I talk with, that they've actually moved a lot further than they ever thought. And when they look back, they're like, oh yeah, right. We kind of forget the struggles we were having 5 years ago. You know, I was shocked when we did it, and I was like, oh yeah, right. 2 years before, I had been still fighting with ICBC. I had been struggling to even walk. I was still struggling with a bunch of neurological symptoms. I was struggling with any form of memory that was more than, that day. So I'd had all these physical struggles, these mental and emotional struggles that now I look back and I'm like, man, they seem like they were 10 years ago. And they were like just a couple years ago. So how far have you come in the last year? And that just helps remind us that, we're a lot closer to this than we think we are. It might seem like it's really, really hard. You ever see that little cartoon and the guy's like picking and picking and picking, and there's the gold on the other side. He's going through the mine, and then he's like, forget it, I give up. And he was that one last hit away from striking gold. And I think that's the case for us in most of our lives. If we're just willing to just move forward. The other thing I would say about this struggle piece is that often the struggle comes because of what I was saying in the very beginning, which is the trusting that we're in co-creation. The understanding that we are never alone. We have guides and guardians that, whether we see them or not, because some people get to see them, or we sense them or not, or we feel them or not, we are really never alone. Even on the physical plane, we're never alone. There's always somebody that's rooting for us. We maybe aren't even aware of it. When I was posting all my photos of me working out in the morning, my sweaty photos, I was only doing that to keep myself accountable. And then next thing I knew, I was getting these messages that were like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing. You're inspiring me to start moving again. And I was like, oh gosh, I can't stop now, because now it's like become a thing. And I was like, you know what? It also keeps me accountable for keep going. So I use my stories a lot of time as my accountability to make sure I'm doing my morning meditation. Now I've added in my ritual reading and journaling, and then my movement. And so there's these little things that we're doing, but we're never alone. I had no idea anybody was even seeing them. I had no idea anybody even really cared. And so it was surprising to me to find out that a lot of people do. Same with when I'm doing my reels. I was like, when you look at likes and stuff, it doesn't seem like there's that much. You're like, oh, is there, what's the point of doing this? And I've been trusting the process with Source that, just keep going. Everybody in the world doesn't need to see or read or hear what you're up to. Only one person that is the person that really needed to hear it needs to hear it. Every morning I say the same prayer. And it's a prayer to remind myself of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and to keep me humble, and to remember that I just work here. And the prayer that I have every morning that I say upon waking is, I call to the highest vibration of love and light to join with my highest self, and I ask for your guidance. How may I be of service today? Please use me, please lead me, please show me the way. And it's always incredible how often I will read something, and then as soon as I read it that morning, and then I share it, and it's exactly what somebody needed to hear. So often we are making an impact in this world, and we have no idea. The person that you smiled at, it just changed their day. Being seen. When somebody feels like they're completely invisible, and you maybe barely know them, and you look at them and say, hey, or call them by their name. And that one thing was enough to impact change. And the same goes for us. So we don't know where we are on our journey. But the more that we can trust the process, that we are in a constant state of co-creation, then the easier it gets for us to just keep moving. I would love your thoughts and comments on this. How does this feel for you? Does it feel like it's a struggle? I say this to you guys because today I feels like it's been a struggle. This first quarter of 2025, I started this year with high expectations, and obviously going through the journey of my mom's passing and moving through grief and healing my own wounds from childhood. There's a lot of those pieces, but even on my business side, it's been questioning. Is this the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? And if I'm looking for external validation, I doubt myself. When I go quiet and go inward and check in with my intuition, check in with my soul, the whispers are always yes. And maybe I get a bit off direction. I'm getting pulled by something else going on, but often that's not the case. I just need to just make some minor adjustments. Maybe I got pulled by comparing myself to somebody else. And when I do it, I almost always come up short. So, that's something that can kind of pull me off. And when I do it, then it's like, okay, how do we just do a quick little reframe and then come back? Come back to ourselves. Come back to our truth. Let them be on their path, on their mountain, and let me be on mine. So I'd love to hear from you. What did this bring up for you today? What would you like to chat about? What questions do you have, or worries or doubts? And if it feels vulnerable putting it in the comments, message me. Message me what's coming up for you and what things are questions or concerns or whatever is coming up for you, and let's chat about it. I would love to hear from you guys. All right. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. I will see you next Thursday on our Facebook Live. Between now and then, we have our YouTube that will drop tomorrow, blog on Sunday, and it just keeps on going. Keep tuned. I'm going to share with you guys my thumbnail for the podcast. It looks like my launch date on that is going to be the Easter long weekend, Good Friday. Just when I went quiet and checked in, that was where the launch was going to begin. So we're going to be dropping our first podcast for Good Friday, April 18th, I believe that is. But I'd love your feedback on the thumbnail. I'd love your feedback on topics that you want to chat about, that sort of thing. And if you're not on my mailing list, jump on there. I usually give a quick little newsletter, really quick read every day, where I'll share whatever is going to be coming up for the day, or things I'm loving, things that I'm reading, maybe some breath work, a quick little meditation to help you center on Mindful Monday, that sort of thing. So join me that way and we'll stay connected. Until next time, you guys, brightest of blessings.